Welcome, everybody. My name is Madeline Ravish, and I'm here from the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. Excited to welcome you to today's panel, Building Our Movement. This is part of the Housing Equals Justice Conference. It's our 18th annual training institute and conference, and it's been amazing to have over 1,000 people from not just across the state, but from all across the country gathered together to think about this question of our movement and what we need to do to end homelessness. We've been taking a good look at issues like racial justice, criminal justice, and economic justice as they relate to homelessness. We have looked at COVID and its implications for homelessness. We've looked at issues specific to families and youth. We've heard from people who've experienced homelessness themselves, sharing really important insights, and it's really been fabulous, and hope that you will continue to tune in for the rest of the day. We are on social media, so please do know that we have some hashtags, ATI 2020, Housing Equals Justice, and End Homelessness. So please help us tell the world that housing equals justice. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so please help tell the world. And of course, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Our presenting sponsors are Bank of America and Zillow, who've made this conference possible and made it possible for us to offer you this conference free of charge. We think that it's really made a huge difference to be able to have people from all walks of life, from all over the country, all together without the barrier of having to pay or get from one place to another. So thank you so much, Bank of America and Zillow. And a special thank you to our workshop sponsor for today, Liberty Bank Foundation. I'm pleased to welcome our sponsor, Sue Murphy, who is the Executive Director of Liberty Bank Foundation, who will say a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here with you. You know, at Liberty Bank Foundation, we've watched over the past decade or so the big changes that have been made in Connecticut and around the country in our systems serving people who are homeless. But I would say that in terms of our work, what we've discovered in watching this happen and in participating in it to some degree is that to really conquer the problem of homelessness and of housing opportunity for everybody, the big job is changing people's minds about it. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is building a movement that helps people understand why you can't have justice without housing. It is a foundation for it, as it is for so many other things. So I'm pleased to see so many of you here today. I want to thank the presenters in advance for what I know is going to be a great conversation, and appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. Thanks, Madeline.
Thank you. And if you haven't checked out our Housing Equals Justice store, we have some great swag available, including t-shirts like the one I'm wearing today, and fabulous mugs and masks. So please check out the store. And so today, and there's one person missing from this slide, so I do apologize. We have 4 fabulous presenters today. We have Tiheba Bain from Women Against Mass Incarceration, Matt McDermott from CONECT, Anderson Curtis from the ACLU Connecticut, and Meryl Eaton from Christian Community Action. So thrilled to have such great people here today to help us talk about building our movement. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fox from the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, and I am so happy to be here today speaking with you all. I just wanted to also add that we are joined by Claudette Kidd, who is with Mothers and Others for Justice, and we'll also be speaking with Meryl Eaton from Christian Community Action. So as you know, and as you've been with us all week, we've been kicking off this Housing Equals Justice campaign. And through this past several months, we've learned more than ever just how critical it is to be housed and to have a safe home to come back to every day. For those experiencing homelessness across the state, these times are truly difficult. And finding and getting people housed has been a mission that so many of you have embarked upon. And together, we want to work with you to build this movement to really get equity across our state. And to get there, we believe at CCEH that housing equals justice, and we know that you will too. We have, as Madeline mentioned, a wonderful series of presenters with us today who are experts in the field of community organizing who are building movements every day. They're going to help us to really truly understand what it takes to build a movement and how we can get there together. I'm going to ask all the panelists to please turn your video on right now so that I can see your lovely faces and everyone else can too. Thank you. We're going to be having a conversation style workshop that's going to be kicked off with me passing this over to Tiheba Bain from Women Against Mass Incarceration in just a moment. And so let me just see if I can see everyone else. So I can. That's fantastic. I just want to talk to you a little bit about what housing equals justice means and what it means to us and what it will mean for this upcoming session. Here at CCEH, we know homelessness is not a failure, and I, having been a person who have experienced homelessness myself, I know just how hard it is every day and has experienced extreme poverty, just how hard it is to get past some of the barriers that we face in life. And being homeless is so truly difficult. My mom also experienced homelessness and she's housed today. And having your family member be homeless is also crippling and hard and difficult. And we come to this for many different reasons, but being part of a movement is something I think can be really a catalyst for change. This movement sits upon three pillars: economic justice, as Connecticut is a really wealthy state, and we believe that it's unacceptable that any household is without a safe place to call home. No one should be sleeping outside. No one should be re-entering our communities from incarceration and exiting into and living in a park because that's the only place that they have to call home for a night. We believe that there are too many people experiencing homelessness that are caught between the revolving door between prisons, shelters, and the streets. We're really working on this, and we look forward to working this upcoming legislative session with you all on this as well. And we know that racial justice is something that we must all be dedicated to. Homelessness is disproportionately experienced by people of color due to discriminatory policies and practices. So let's all do this together. I'm going to pass this over to Tiheba Bain from Women Against Mass Incarceration to share her why and what drives her today in her local community. Tiheba? Got to unmute. There you go.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, hello, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. My why as to what drives me in my work. Well, I am my why, right? I am my sister's keeper. People power is what is going to be the catalyst of change in the community that we want to see in the world today. I look at the world and I look at my community and I look at the injustices that happen and I can't help but to want to actually do something and be a part of the change. As a formerly incarcerated woman, I sit on commissions and committees and I help make change. And I understand like what it takes for us to make things happen. And in order for us to make things happen, we have to be a collective. We have to do this and as a unit to build the people power, to become as strong as the forces that are against us. Building a movement is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time, energy, and effort. And mobilizing and bringing and organizing a community actually takes engagement and involvement in reach and outreach. I work within. I try to do my best to work within the community of the prison system for women and girls, and I work within the system outside for women and girls to help build a base of power, of empowerment, of understanding that we are the glue to the foundation of life. And when we get an understanding of that as a woman, as a female entity in this world, and in the place in which we need to take, we become empowered. And that right there in turns build power within the community. Because if you look at it, women are the fastest growing population to enter into the prison system. And in the process of all that's taking place, we have more children entering into the youth detention systems. We have dysfunctional families. We have more ACS or a CPS intervention in our families because the mothers are now being removed. What it means to become a community organizer. Community organizer is something that I never saw myself doing or becoming or actually is, because I just do the work because the work needs to get done. And then that means that I alone cannot do it by myself. It means that I need to organize. I need to build and bring in people of this like minds and of the same heart and of abolition and reentry framework to do the work. So for me to say, I never even saw myself as an organizer. I just do the work. But it means so much, and it gives me such joy to work with such great people that's on the same mission and on the same path as I am, to see the change in the world that needs to be seen, that needs to happen. Again, it happens with people power, and it happens with, organizing, and it happens with understanding that as a collective and as a whole, that we can do it. We can't do it by ourselves, and we cannot make the change possible if we work in silos. So we have to come together and bridge the gap of what's happening in the world as the work that I do, and that's my why. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Tiheba, and we'll come back to you. I'm now going to introduce Meryl Eaton and Claudette Kidd from Mothers and Others for Justice. I've had the extreme honor of working with Meryl for almost over a decade with Mothers and Others for Justice. And in building a movement in our work to end homelessness, I just think it's really important that you all share some of the work that you're doing in your local community and greater in downtown New Haven, and your why and your thoughts on how we can build this movement for housing equals justice in Connecticut.
Okay, so I am the Director of Advocacy and Education for Christian Community Action, and for the past 15 years I've been privileged to work alongside Mothers and Others for Justice, which is a grassroots advocacy group in New Haven that started with women living in Christian Community Action's homeless shelter. I think I have been a community organizer since 8th grade, and my why has always been that I believe the voice of the people most impacted by an issue should be heard, and their recommendation should be used in the making of public policy. Now, everybody always shakes their head yes. Nobody's ever disagreed, but there is a very big difference between having physical room at a table and having emotional room at a table. And so I thought I would like to share some of the lessons learned and some of the things besides the women and men from Mothers and Others for Justice that have inspired me. So I'd like to start with a quote from the childhood book, The Little Prince. And it says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And this quote is so important to me because when, in our work with people who, have experienced trauma, who are worrying about where their next meal is going to come through, right now that are balancing 4 kids sitting on computers all day long, we have to give them hope and we have to give them vision. So I want to talk about a win and some of our lessons learned. So I started as a community organizer in Connecticut and was given the task of helping parents fight for more recreational opportunities. And we had a wonderful, charming mayor who said no. He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to build playgrounds. He wasn't going to listen to parents. And we strategized, and we decided that our best strategy was to make him into a hero. And so we did a little bit of background and found out that this city had spent a huge amount of money on lawsuits for children who had gotten hurt in parks and playgrounds. And so we went back to him, and we just mentioned that kind of quietly. And we said, wouldn't it be amazing if a year from now or 2 years from now, you could be talking about how you helped bring playgrounds to this city? And I am proud to tell you that there was $2 million put in the budget for playgrounds. And indeed, at his State of the Union speech, he talked about the wonderful work that he did in getting playgrounds. So that's one of my first lessons is look for the win. I also want to talk about that community organizing is not linear. Don't expect it to be. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, and that's okay. Every organization needs people with many different skills. Claudette was happy to join us to speak out, but Brenda serves dinner at all our meetings and cleans up, and they're all important. And here's another saying, I begin to sound like a Hallmark card. Once you teach a bear to dance, you must keep dancing until the bear wants to stop. So I was asked to talk about our Room for All coalition. So we are here in New Haven, and New Haven is a city that is rapidly gentrifying. So we've had about, I think the last count, maybe 63, that number is probably higher, new luxury complexes go up. And in the meantime, where are people going to live? So the name was very deliberate, Room for All. And we began to look for partners and allies. And one of the things that I never anticipated was my own lesson that it's not linear. And so the group morphed in different ways. And we had to learn to be okay with that. So one of our successes in Room for All is that a young man named Sam Greenberg was very committed to getting a youth shelter in New Haven. I confessed I did not think this was ever going to happen, but we joined with Sam, and Sam ended up with approximately 154 letters of recommendation, and indeed, New Haven will have another youth shelter. So, we're going to go back to, our why, which are things like inclusionary zoning, but, Sam's win is our win as well. And I think maybe we will have more opportunities to talk about this, but I would like to make sure that Claudette has an opportunity to speak as well.
Go ahead, Claudette. I can't wait to hear from you. You must unmute yourself.
I'm there talking away. Good afternoon, everyone. Claudette Kidd from Mothers and Others for Justice. My journey, my advocacy journey with Mothers and Others for Justice, that started I was homeless. Circumstances made me homeless while I was staying with family members, and went through a terrible time, eventually got into a shelter in New Haven. And then along comes Meryl, and with her paperwork and everything, and talking about Mothers and Others for Justice. And it just seemed right up my alley. And like it talked about things exactly what I was going through. And so I connected with Meryl and attended almost every meeting since then. And the housing part, being homeless, I had to advocate for myself to become housed. Because it was very difficult in the shelter. I was there for 3.5 months, maybe a little bit longer. And you see people constantly getting housed. They're getting vouchers to be housed. And I'm like, okay, when's my turn? When's my turn? And my turn wasn't coming up. But because I'm kind of proactive and I ask questions, it wasn't it wasn't welcomed. So then I kind of become the bottom of the list. So Meryl suggested getting in touch with aldermen, state senators, state representatives. I had Paola and like other like visible representatives of our grassroots organization all come in to help me, for which I was blessed. And with that came questions to the shelter, like what's going on? Why are we hearing this? And eventually they said they were going to come visit the shelter. Of course, that's not a good look if things aren't going right. So I was given a voucher and here I am, I'm housed. And I've been housed now for over 3 years. I wasn't working and during my field and people come into our meetings, I met Alice Forrester and eventually I was part of a press conference with her, and she encouraged me to apply to Clifford Beers for work, and that's what I did. And so now I'm currently a community health organizer, which ties in perfectly with Mothers and Others for Justice, because it's still out in the community, reaching people, letting them know what's going on. And I'm hoping that I can be a voice for those who don't have a voice, and people can emulate me, and we can get a bigger organization going together, a partnership throughout the city of New Haven, so that they can see that we're serious. The definition of housing needs to be changed so that more people can be housed, and we'll take it all the way and do what we need to do. And I'm very determined with that.
Thank you so much, Claudette. You know, I wish that your housing journey had been easier. We are striving every day. We know we don't have enough housing for all of those experiencing homelessness today, and we're fighting that fight, and that's why we're all here today. But your story is so important, so thank you so much for sharing it. And together we can definitely make an impact.
I believe so.
Oh, so do I. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to introduce Anderson Curtis. He works with ACLU Smart Justice and is another force to be reckoned for when we think about our movement for housing equals justice and all that we can learn from him.
Thank you, Sarah.
There you are. Aha!
Like
The background changed.
Yeah, I had to soften it up a bit. I'd like to thank all the panelists that went before me. Merle, I'll be reaching out to you. I'd like to learn something from you because you sound like you have a lot of experience. Thank you. I wanted to talk about effective communications and relationships in building a community, building, organizing, building a movement. And you know, one of the things Merrill mentioned was a win, and then also being able to celebrate with other organizations, Mothers and Others Against Justice, Women Against Mass Incarceration, CONECT, being able to celebrate their wins as well. And so in that light, I'd just like to make an announcement that the Connecticut DOC is going to start visits for families after October 15th. And so that is a win for everyone in this state. And I'm really glad that was able to come about. And you know, sometimes those wins and those celebrations don't always come in the way we expect them. And so being able to continue to remain steadfast in this work and not only maintaining my hope, but being able to be a messenger of hope for other people. One of the beautiful things about being an organizer and my job is connecting someone to a campaign, connecting someone to what their struggles may be, and then giving them a platform and access and helping them find their voice. And what does their advocacy look like? You know, and having a campaign that can support that and help that grow and cultivate that is where, you know, a win for our campaign is also a win for them and also a win for other people, because, you know, what we work on and where it intersects with housing equals justice is for those folks still incarcerated in our state. And what are they coming home to? What does building a community that's welcoming to them look like? You know, people being released into homelessness, that's unacceptable. You know, and how do we collectively begin to change that conversation? How do we begin to change that narrative? And to me, it's being able to effectively communicate what your campaign is about and why it's important to you. You know, and to me, this work, I was doing this work before I realized I was doing this work. You know, a lot of it was just me advocating for myself to get out of a system that I had been entangled in for years. You know, never realizing that I would end up where I am today. You know, and so sometimes we're able to do what's put in front of us, and it leads to bigger and better things for all. And so one of the great joys of my job, again, is helping folks gain access to a process that they never thought that they could meaningfully participate in. You know, when we were able to bring people to the Capitol to lobby with legislators for change, and to see the look on their face, and to see, like Meryl talk about that longing for the seed being created, you know, that's incredible. That's incredible. But more importantly, that it's meaningful, that it impacts not just us on this screen, that it impacts other people that we're connected to, our families and our communities that we live in, and where we go worship at. Whatever we do, we work together with people. And so, you know, Connecticut has made some great strides, but there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot more work to be done. So building community is extremely important. And just being able to be for real, being authentic, being vulnerable. You know, I never knew that vulnerability was going to become a strength, but this is something that I've learned in this process. And so, you know, and speaking about learning, that's the thing. Campaigns that aren't adapting and moving forward are dying. And so how do you learn how to do that? How do we learn how to do that in COVID? Look at the presentation that's going on today. That just shows that we're all being adaptable and moving forward what we're giving, you know, because the work must go forward and people continue to show up every day because they care. And so how do we support others in that? How do we support ourselves in that is extremely important to me. And, you know, I just am so happy to be part of this community, happy to be part of this panel. And, you know, my background is my Care Bear Army, you know, and that's how we're going to get it done. We all have a goal that we're working towards, but as we work together, guess what? We'll create space for each other to continue to move forward in this. And so, again, I just want to thank everyone, and I'll give it back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I think, you know, between Tiheba talking about people power and then Claudette and Meryl sort of speaking about, you know, making it very personal and what it means to tell your story, and then you sort of talking about the dignity of that story and making a seat at the table, which was something that, and actually having that seat, it's such an important thing to share when we think about building our movement to end homelessness. And that, you know, as a person who's experienced homelessness themselves, you know, I'm always one to say, like, just having a seat at the table doesn't matter. You need to actually feel the power when you're sitting there. And so I'm so glad that we're getting that message across today. And now I'm pleased to present Matt McDermott from CONECT. Matt, as everyone, is an amazing organizer who works with interfaith ministries across the state. And so Matt, will you share a little bit about, you know, your why and how you build a coalition across the state with your members?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thanks to the other panelists as well. I am the lead organizer of CONECT, which is Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut. And I've been here now organizing with CONECT for 8 years in Connecticut. But I'm originally born and raised and started my organizing work in Chicago. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and a piece of my why, the reason why I first got interested in this work was just growing up where I grew up, and seeing a community that was, you know, for much of my childhood in the 70s and 80s being disinvested and destroyed, and you know, seeing that discrepancy of opportunity versus poverty, and access to power and resources and investment versus not, right outside the front door of my house. I also grew up in a Catholic family where our faith and Catholic values and Catholic school was really important. And at times that was very suffocating, but at times now as an adult, I look back and value it. And then I grew up with this as somewhat of a heritage. My folks met doing civil rights work themselves in 1960. And so, you know, as they were raising my brothers and I, a big part of what they raised us with were the stories of the ways in which they had been involved in fighting for social justice and systemic change themselves. And so, you know, my dad probably would have loved me to go to law school or business school or get some real job with paid money, but I didn't fall far from the tree. And I, as I said, I started organizing in Chicago. Actually, my first internship out of college was an internship trying to learn how to do community organizing, and it was on an affordable housing campaign. So that experience of being involved as a very small player, but being along for the ride on a really well-organized campaign in Chicago that built a movement around the city to demand that there be money, not from the federal budget, not from the state budget, but from the city budget for affordable housing, was a really formative experience and a really big taste for me as a young person of what was possible with community organizing. About 6 weeks after I finished that internship, there was a victory of a $250 million deal for new money for affordable housing in Chicago over 5 years. So I had that taste of the potential that organizing has when it really catches fire, and there's a strength of organized people and power relationships brought together to bear to make something happen. And I never found another type of work that I thought afforded that opportunity to have impact, to act around my values, and to work with people of all kinds and all backgrounds who are fighting for themselves and fighting for each other and fighting for investment and a fair shake for their people, their communities, and for all of us. So that's a bit about my background and why I do this work. You know, a big part of organizing for me and for the way in which we organize in CONECT is about building relationships and having relationships be the centerpiece and the foundation upon which we do everything else. So the organization is a multi-issue organization. We work on a variety of different things depending on what we're hearing from people and what they're telling us in conversations where we're building relationships. You can see I'm sporting. I thought Anderson was going to be in his blue shirt today, so I had to get ready and wear my shirt. I'm wearing my clean slate shirt because we're fighting. We've been the lead in fighting and great partners in ACLU fighting with us on trying to pass a clean slate bill in Connecticut to automatically expunge people's criminal records so they don't have to live as second-class citizens. Where they're barred from housing and jobs and all kinds of other opportunities based on having a criminal past or criminal conviction. But you know, I didn't come up with that. That wasn't my idea. That was from having conversations in the community and in our congregations and hearing from people their own stories and their own experiences of living that, and then giving them an opportunity to share that story with other people and other people to hear it and get galvanized around. And frankly, sometimes people you would never expect, right? So part of the power that we've been able to leverage in CONECT is building broad relationships across difference, right? Across race, across faith lines, across geography, to where we can have multiracial groups and multi-economic groups, right? People from Westport and people from Woodbridge and people from places you don't think of that will go up to the Capitol and fight for clean slate, or go up to the Capitol and fight so undocumented people can get a driver's license, or other things like that, where we've had campaigns that have brought unlikely people together and unlikely allies to exercise their power with elected officials and with the legislature and with the governor and what have you. So it's a lot about building relationships, listening to folks, and of course taking advantage, right? We can never necessarily know when a movement moment will come about. We saw that happen this summer. And hopefully that will continue. But part of part of the opportunity in organizing is to be in place so that when a movement moment happens, we can take advantage of it, right? Make the best of a crisis as opposed to hunkering down and just surviving it. We know that power people on Wall Street and power people in all kinds of other power positions see a crisis and they think, what can we get out of that? What can we do to take advantage of our position and strengthen our position? Too often, we in the community organizing and the social justice world are just knocked back on our heels when a crisis comes, as opposed to being prepared to say, how do we take advantage of this and win something for our people? And I think, we should all be happy probably, or give ourselves a pat on the back in Connecticut with ACLU and everybody else on the call, and many of you in the audience fighting for police accountability in Connecticut and getting a law passed. No, it's not perfect, but we got a law passed in Connecticut this summer. There are not that many other states have achieved that yet. So I'll stop there, but that's a little bit about my background and the way we organize.
Thank you so much, Matt. And I think that that's so important. And when we think about COVID-19 and we think about the impact that it's had on the state, it's been clearly devastating. And as Anderson said earlier, it's changed the way that we do work in advocacy and the way that we are able to outreach to people and how we're able to tell the story, and we're working on so many critical and crucial issues right now. And so I'm going to just have each of you on the panel sort of outline what's going to change for you in this next few months as we head into legislative session, and how you're going to help and empower the people you're working with and your constituencies to tell their stories and get the word out to legislators. So we're going to go in the same order that we had before, but Tiheba, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Hi, Sarah. Can you repeat the question again, please?
Well, it was sort of a double-barreled question, but your work in COVID-19 and how you're going to, what's going to change this legislative session, and when you think about building a movement, how are you going to ensure that the people that you're working with and that are your partners every day are able to tell their story effectively to legislators?
Okay, so COVID definitely has changed the way everyone does their work. And we've been on high alert. The nonprofit sector has definitely been on high alert, and we've done more Zooms and more webinars and more seminars than we ever thought we were ever going to do or needed to do. And I think that has broken down the community in a sense, because we don't have that community interaction. So for my community, what we're looking to do is actually do video on telling stories and building out legislation, because we also have time where we can actually go and rally in front of the LOB. And next legislative session, we're going to be more active in doing so. We haven't been active this past session because everything was up in the air and, things just didn't coincide with our schedule. But we're strategizing now for the next session, so we can go to the LOB and rally for clemency for the women that we need to bring home due to being elderly, infirmed, or long-termers, or survived and punished. We're looking to present bills this session for primary caretakers, and we're gonna tell our stories the best way we know how. We're gonna put it on social media as much as we can. And understand, I don't do social media too well, but I know people that do, and they're going to help us bring our stories through the social media platform. We're actually going to do, we're looking to do webinars and panel discussions like this to get the story out, to get the information out. Matt talked about the police accountability, but and in that police accountability bill that has been passed, and we thank God for it, no one's really talking about the Sandra Blands or the Breonna Taylors in this process of police accountability, because a lot of times, George Floyd was the catalyst that propelled this movement in such a great way. But we have many people that came before George Floyd and that has come after George Floyd that's still being affected by this police brutality. And we have many women, and we don't have any justice for the women. So that is something that I'm definitely going to be talking about and bringing out, because in spite of COVID, we're still standing strong. And we still need to elevate what's the issues and concerns of the women. And that seems to have, is falling off on the side a little bit, especially with certain bills that just focus on the brutality of men and the issues of men. And not saying that they're not noticing women, but we're not being mentioned as much as we should. Again, because I'm the executive director of Women Against Mass Incarceration, and I'm a staunch advocate for women and girls. So I have to bring women and girls into every platform in which I'm on. And so that's the reason why I do what I do. So my thing is community, it's going to be hard, but it's going to happen, because social distancing, we're going to have PPE, we're going to have masks, we're going to have a hand sanitizer. We give that stuff away today to the community to help us organize within the right of the community here in Bridgeport. We actually do voting registration drives right now amid COVID, because even though COVID is amidst us, we don't stop the work. We still have to continue to work. And this is what Women Against Mass Incarceration and the people around me are still doing. We still go to the mayors. We still have sit-ins and, protests and rallies in our local areas. We don't go abroad so much, further out so much, because we're still got to do social distancing and be more comfortable in what we're doing. And we got to be strategic in how we do it. Did I answer the question?
You really did. And you also added a whole bunch of information that was important and timely. And we stand alongside you. So I'm just so grateful for all the work that you're doing. We did get a couple of questions in our chat. One question that we've been asked that I'm going to move on in terms of the sequence of questions that we're asking is, in real terms, how do you inspire people who wouldn't normally be interested? So Meryl and Claudette, you both work, on economic, racial, and criminal justice reform in the city of New Haven. How are you inspiring people to stand alongside you to sort of break some of the NIMBYism and change the dialogue in the community of New Haven?
Yeah, for me, a big part of this work is relationship building. It's not going into a conversation and telling them what we're interested in and what's important to us. It's investing time and energy and commitment in learning about people's issues, what pushes their button, what concerns they have, and making sure that our work is a reflection of their needs and their passion.
It was a good answers. Thank you so much. Claudette, I don't see you, but I know you're here. Is she here? Claudette?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
For me, it's about going out into the communities, the different wards, and listening to what people are saying and bringing that information back to the organizations and doing something with that information that we can bring back positive news to the community. What was it, a year and a half ago, 2 years? We were actively on the, the housing task force, that's it. And we went to every single meeting, even in a snowstorm, right, Meryl? And we struggled and got there just because we felt that housing was so important and that we had to be there to voice what we had to say so that it's documented and they can see that we're totally dedicated. Out of that, they're now forming the Permanent Affordable Housing Committee. And I've put in my application for that. I've had recommendations. I'm hoping to be a part of that. Continue advocacy, getting organizations together, like I said earlier. So I heard Anderson say that he's going to talk with Merrill. We already have meetings with Matt. And just if we can form together and make a bigger organization so we have more people and address that with the city and address that with the state. And like my colleague said here, how do you pronounce your name? Tiheba, about getting bills and getting things changed, because that's what we have to do, and we need the community behind us to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Claudette. And with this Housing Equals Justice campaign, we're hoping that together we can sort of address the intersectionality of, you know, economic, racial, and criminal justice reform, and really, you know, get lawmakers to listen this legislative session to the important, you know, we are all here today because we're all committed in some way or another to this really important movement. And so often we've sort of sat in our own silos. And, you know, we've taken a small chunk as advocates, but this is really addressing the broader, more global view, you know, knowing that there is such an intersectionality and that we can do this together. So thank you so much. I think that was a really incredible and poignant point. Anderson, one question that just came in was around funding. You know, as we all know, funding for advocacy and for the work that we do is hard to come by. And often is sort of scraping a couple nickels together. So how, you know, do you have any thoughts for those advocates out there who are thinking about how to fund a program such as Smart Justice?
To be quite frank, not really. That is one of the benefits of working at the ACLU, is that, you know, I don't have to concern myself with that. You know, they kind of, there's people taking care of that within our affiliate. But when I do hear funding, I think about yesterday on your keynote when the acting commissioner, Quiros, was talking about how he was going to find more funding for more beds, you know, in the community for people coming out of incarceration. And what does that look like? Because the other political reality is that whatever legislation we want to pass, it has a price tag attached to it. And there's a budget that people have to work within. And so how do you work around that sometimes, where there's a fiscal note applied to a bill or law or whatever? You know, so funding is a reality on both sides of the picture, whether you're trying to build a movement and put people together, or whether you're trying to get something passed. But, you know, I can speak from experience about the fact that one of the questions I've been asked in job interviews in the past is, are you willing to do what you're doing for free? And I have done it for free for a long time. And again, you know, that's just where my level of passion is personally. So, you know, I've gone to conferences and things on my own dime. Volunteered for a year with Prison Fellowship, going to Rikers Island to be a life coach for an hour and a half. And so I know that cost. You know, and it's not just financial. And so, you know, that's the other thing about the commitment to this organizing. Meryl mentioned time. You know, I don't, when I go to meet with people one-on-one, I don't go there dictating what they have to do for Smart Justice. I go there to listen to them. And what are their values? What is important to them? How can the campaign support them and what they want to get done? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it doesn't even have to be about them going to testify. Sometimes it has to be about one of their loved ones incarcerated and they need the direction of who to contact, you know, so it has to be really practical at first, and we build those relationships, and then we could work together for larger goals, because quite frankly, you have to establish trust and credibility with folks, because people have been hurt. And so, you know, what does that look like, and being able to listen. So while I may not have been able to answer the question about funding, you know, there's many different ways to spend resources, and time and listening to people is one that never gets old.
I think that was incredibly well said and also really important. And sometimes in this conversation, you know, it's just the certain nuggets and the kernels of wisdom that, you know, you are all presenting that I think will be major takeaways. You know, just, you know, I'm going to go over to Matt. Matt, when I think about the work that CONECT is doing on Clean Slate and all the organizations that you're working with, you know, how are you sort of thinking about galvanizing your work within the next few months? I can't see you, but I know you're here somewhere.
I'm here. Well, can I jump back and just say something about funding real quick, and then
you really can, and it would be great if you could address that question.
I think maybe it was Tiheba, somebody was talking about people power, and of course I think in community organizing, most of us probably around this panel think primarily about organizing as organizing people. But if we think organizing overall is about building power to be able to be effective and win change, I always think of power as having at least two dimensions. One is organized people and the other is organized money. And if we're honest, any of our organizations, any of our campaigns can only go so far on exclusively volunteer power, like Anderson has at times done. At some point, if we want to have a sustained, effective organization like ACLU or CONECT or Christian Community Action or any of us, we got to have some organized money. And so it's another organizing problem, and organizing begins with relationships. And so I always think about it as another organizing challenge and another relationship building challenge. And yes, some funders have no interest in supporting this kind of work, but there are other funders out there. And the other thing, you know, certainly that we think about and start with is our own membership. Now we're structured in a way where we have congregations that are our members, and all those member congregations not only are expected to organize people from their congregations to participate in the organization, but they're expected to organize some money to put in the pot collectively as membership dues, so that they own the organization, they help pay for the organization, and we already have a foundation upon which we're able to then build to ask funders and individuals to support the work even further. So sometimes it's, you know, tricky for people. People have, you know, qualms and hangups and have a hard time talking about money or asking for money. But I think it's another piece of organizing and a piece of power that we have to build to be able to be effective. And we can't, the work that we do is valuable. It's important. And so I think we have to have the courage of our convictions that what we do matters and ask for it to be paid for, both by the people that are involved in it, like we do with our church and congregation members, but also by funders who, you know, are out in the community, who care about the topics we care about, but maybe sometimes are a little shy about what they see this work being sometimes as more political than they're comfortable with. Well, if we want real change, sometimes we have to be able to do the advocacy work that feels political. I think most of us are nonpartisan. It's not as if we're doing political campaigns, but what we are doing is public advocacy for change. So that's one way I think we think about it and approach it. You're asking about Clean Slate and galvanizing people. I'll try to give a real quick answer. And I think it relates to the question about inspiring people. It's, you know, the listening work that Claudette and Meryl and others talked about, I think is critical. But then that's the sharing of those stories. We listen, we hear we talk to amazing people, interesting people who have been through crazy stuff of all kinds. And and you know, I'm inspired all the time by the people I have the privilege to talk to in this work. And part of what my job is to lift their stories up and get them to have the confidence or the opportunity to share their story with other people. Those stories of people who've lived these issues, whether it's criminal justice or homelessness or what have you, when we give them an opportunity to share that story, that is what inspires people to want to act, to be connected to this, not as a abstract policy good, but as something that affects some real person that they now know. Nobody's inspired by statistics, or very few people are, maybe some geeks are inspired by statistics, but not too many people are inspired by statistics. People are inspired by human stories that connect to their own experience or to their values on some level. And I think that a big part of what we're trying to do and what we've tried to do. And I think what smart justice is all about is having people who have lived the experience, who have a story, who can share what it means to come through the criminal justice system and fight for change. So that's a big part of what we've done with Clean Slate. We call it, internally we've called something, we talk about Clean Slate on the road. Effectively, that means we've got members of our team who have a story to share, who are going to different congregations and at a worship service or a Bible study or whatever type of gathering that congregation may have, that they're willing to allow somebody to come and share a story about their experience. They're doing that. And that's a way to talk about the issue, but also put a human face on the issue and put it right inside of that congregation's faith tradition. How does this, so that's one example of a way we've galvanized more engagement and attention and support from within. And then I think, we've been lucky enough now to, lucky or cursed enough, right? We were halfway through a really good year, I think, when COVID struck and the legislature shut down. But we've now made a fair amount of noise about Clean Slate, and people are interested to hear about it. And I think it's, the idea that people should have a real chance at full redemption and full citizenship and not have to be living for a lifetime with a criminal record as a lifetime sentence is a really compelling thing. So we've been able to talk to allied type organizations up in Hartford and in Waterbury and the Valley and elsewhere. And any of you on the line who want to learn more about Clean Slate, we'll talk to you, of course, as well. But I think it's a big part of it is first and foremost those personal stories of people who have lived this experience, who are fighting for themselves and fighting for others like them to make change, whether it's about Clean Slate or any other topic.
Thank you so much, Matt. I have to begin wrapping us up, but I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank each and every one of you. This commitment to housing equals justice and Clean Slate and women against mass incarceration and the work that you're doing at Smart Justice and Criminal Justice Reform and the work that you're doing at Christian Community Action on all of these issues, you are all inspiring, and I'm so happy to be a colleague. And I know that the messages that you've shared today will resonate with people. And this is just the beginning of a tough few months, but together, I truly believe with people like you out in this world, we can make this world, this state, a more just state for people. So I just thank you so much again. And I look forward to more conversations in the future. I just want to close out by directing you all to today's schedule. We are coming close to the end of this fantastic annual training institute. Next, we're going to have our Hamden virtual town hall on homelessness, so feel free to join. It's going to be inspiring. And then we're having our final happy hour of the week. And thanks again for your stories, for your bravery, for helping people build their voice. I am just so grateful to have had this conversation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
Matt,
you.
I'm wearing Tiheba's shirt, Matt. See? Got Tiheba's
All
shirt.
right.
Yeah.
Women Against Mass Incarceration. Thank you, Anderson.
Yes, come on, you already know.
Sarah, this has
know.
really been great. Thank you for having me. Matt, I look forward to reconnecting with you. Claudette, I hope to know you and connect with you. Meryl, I sent you an email. Anderson, I'll see you in a little while.
And I'm going to connect with all of you to sort of figure out how we can come back together and work on the Housing Equals Justice campaign together.
Amen.
Set up a webcam meeting and just invite people. Just get as many people as we can.
Yeah,
we'll do it.
That's
and
right,
you'll be my
Claudette.
inspiration.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Meryl. I
Thank
emailed
you
you
so
too.
much. Thank you,
See you soon,
Meryl.
Matt. Good seeing you, man.
Good to see
Sarah,
you.
great job, Sarah.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job,
you.
Sarah.